What's that, 2 weeks in a row, Shakeless?
That is 2 weeks in a row.
Right.
And you got no shakes.
Got no shakes. No milkshakes.
And there will be no...
And no boys in your
There will be
eye.
no scripts. No scripts. You will learn the words.
Yeah, story canon. What is it?
Story canon. It's when you get a cannon.
Okay.
And instead of loading like a cannonball, then you load a grape shot, but filled with books. And then you shoot it into the air, and that's it. That's all it is. It's 100% all it is. No, canon, well, I define canon simply as just the official storyline of a series, a universe, a character, because like when something becomes so big or grows in the telling over the years. Also,
as I found it, as it changes hands, seems to be where there gets to be strife, because then the different entities want to try and redefine what is and isn't parts of those stories. Those like it typically surrounds franchises and like big pieces of storytelling. Yeah,
big pieces of storytelling or character. Like comic book characters are probably the easiest go-to in terms of explaining what canon is, Superman and Kryptonite, that's a canon thing, you know what I mean? Like that's his weakness. But there can be other things there, his standard, red and blue outfit
tends to deal in like
the sun. Those are all
what is authentically part of the storyline per whatever entity currently is controlling.
Yeah, that is considered canon. You could argue
a rough definition of it.
The Snyderverse isn't quite canon, as what you know what I mean. Like that's not considered. That's its own take on.
Well, even just like Batman, you look at like the five or so different like big screen takes on Batman. Like there's like vastly different bits of information. They're vastly different views of the entire world that it is. So like there's lots of variation with even like the minor characters. Like there's just vast differences, and it's like, okay, what is and isn't going on here?
And it's one of those things too that I feel like canon can't become canon until something has been around for a decent amount of time. If it's something brand new, you don't really hear the term canon right off the bat used because it's a brand new work, so we don't have anything yet. The mold, if you will, hasn't finished setting.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you could certainly have canon in terms of maybe like genres, like what's canon to the genre, what people like expect out of genres, but yeah, I simply define it as what is considered the genuine take on a character, a story, or a world. This is the through line, and anything that doesn't fit this storyline isn't considered canonical. It doesn't necessarily mean anything that's like a spin-off is bad. It's just that it's not the accepted, I guess, for lack of a better term.
And it does get ugly, I'll say, especially in the age that corporate entities start taking control of things that the original creators have passed on or something like that, or they sell it for money. It can get where the fan bases who grew up loving it can start to resent changes, or, the other way around. A corporate entity can try and make changes that aren't accepted, and then they feel like failures. It causes a lot of strife, and so that's why like online debates get me very heated on what is and isn't canon for a storyline or a fan base. It just
like one thing I think of, like for like a simple example of canon. I don't know if you've ever watched any Full Metal Alchemist. I don't know why this popped in my head just now.
I know I have friends who have been fans, but I don't know it personally.
So I haven't seen enough of it to be considered a diehard fan by any stretch of the means, but I do enjoy it, what I've seen. The animation anyway. I haven't seen, I think there was a live action recently, but I haven't seen that. But in it, essentially, the magic system, it's a much more hard magic system, meaning there's a science to it.
Yeah.
If you do this, you do that. One of the founding principles, and they literally say it in the beginning of the show, is called the law of equivalent exchange. That's kind of like the big thing, that the big aspect of the rules of the magic that sort of permeates the heart of the show and the characters in it. But essentially, that all that means, I'm really butchering it, oversimplifying it, but essentially, like, if you want to do something, you have to give something up. Like, you can't create something from nothing. There's that law of equivalent exchange. Kind of like for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to, if you want to, turn. So here's a better one, I guess, like similar to what I'm talking about in Avatar: The Last Airbender, when Katara learns how that you can manipulate the water in things or even like pull it out. In one of the episodes, the Puppet Master, she learns from the lady that you can actually pull the water out of like plants. But by doing that, you're killing the plants too in the process. So that's similar to like what I'm saying, the canon in Full Metal Alchemist, like same idea. Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, essentially. Like, you want this reaction, well then you got to put something into it. You got to give something up.
Yeah.
To make it happen. And that is considered canon to that world. And changing that, if you went and changed it, one, I would say if you're going to do that, write something brand new. But if you change that, then anything that follows, whatever you change, if you get rid of that law, I would consider that any story after that would be its own separate thing.
Well, there's an argument to this that I think I see the value of both sides of this particular argument. So it's like if an entity makes changes to something that has been around for a while, they risk making enemies of the fan base and that they're changing too much of what makes the thing the thing. But at this, by the same token, if you take it and just give the exact same thing to your fan base, there will be a lot of people. Like, the diehard fans will be very happy with that, but then you have an entire group of people who will feel like they're just getting the exact same thing over again. So there's the felt need to spice it up, make it new in a way, and make some alterations. So there's an ongoing debate back and forth with what do you and do you not change in reiterating a franchise like that. Like, in how a good example is Marvel. I think Walking Dead has tried to emulate the Marvel platform in a lot of ways and make changes to the source material, the original Kirkman graphic novels. And
I've never read the original graphic novels for Walking Dead.
So I think the issue with Walking Dead is it has suffered greatly from some of the changes that they've made. And especially, and I don't want to get too spoilery with Walking Dead, but some of the changes they've made to Carl and Rick's particular story dynamic has like drastically altered like the meaning of the story. And I think that the show version of The Walking Dead and the comic books have drastically different meanings as a result of the changes that have been made from the source material. And I think that that's been a very interesting experiment to watch unfold for all of its blunders and its successes. And the MCU, I think they have a built-in apparatus to kind of cheat this entire system, and that's the multiverse. They basically say that the comic books are one universe and the movies and all the subversions of the movies are separate universes. So like they have this built-in system to deflect any argument of this. It's like, oh, well, it's a completely different universe. So
still, though, you could say, if you wanted to make the argument, well, which one is canon? Are the movies the canon, or are the comic books?
The argument that
the canon
Marvel Comics would throw at you is that they are all canon in different universes.
See, I mean, I'm fine with, and let me say this too. Just because something isn't canon doesn't make it bad or lesser.
I agree.
Then it's just, it would be like, okay, since I'm such a fan of Greek mythology, it would be the equivalent of like if I rewrote the Iliad to have it so that the Trojans win in the end. And that like becomes like its own big thing.
Then you have a whole separate argument to that it's like, well, it's history is the ultimate canon as far as things like that.
It's like, but that's not canon, and that's okay. We're just kind of, we're trying to define the term here that we want to talk about. But I just want to make that clear that just because something isn't canon doesn't mean it's bad.
No, we're not. It just means that whatever particular entity is heralding it is saying that that's not pertaining to our particular take on this story. Like, for instance, Terminator is a good example. There's a reinvention. Pretty much every version after 2 reinvents the franchise.
Pretty much.
But Dark Fate particularly tried to go back and say everything between this movie and Terminator 2 didn't happen. We're completely or by this another one that did this exact same thing was the David Gordon Green Halloween movies. They went and said every sequel between this and the first Halloween didn't happen.
Yeah.
They basically erased the canon up into a certain point just to kind of like slide in and tell the story from a particular point.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting too is there's no like official, at least I don't think there's no like official canon office or, like a book that's like, that tells you like what's canon for every series and story, creative work that's ever been made in human history out there.
I think it's just called Reddit.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
No, it's just
you know what time it is right now.
Reddit is just
bringing the jokes.
Reddit is just a rat's nest of chaos, of arguing and bickering and debating, and 90% of it is story canon.
Yeah. Well, that made me think of like speaking of like a canon. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of spitballing here with like things. I know, for example, when they do affect the canon, how it can. I know for me, sometimes I cannot like it depending on what they do.
Yeah.
And an example I'm just thinking of in my head that popped in again was the newer Mulan movie.
That one was, that was tough.
That mostly because up until there's one thing that they changed, and I'm going to get into spoilers here. For me, in the original movie, in the original animated movie from 98, at the very end or close to the end, the Emperor bows to Mulan. In the newer version, Mulan, the live action, Mulan bows to the Emperor.
Yeah.
That, for me, was like a huge departure from canon. And that one I was like, ooh, okay, there's an example for me where I'm like, ooh, I didn't like that one. I'll be honest with that.
Yeah.
So there's an example where I think, yeah, you have to, it's tough. It's tricky because like you said, you don't.
Well, that's where it gets difficult in reviving previously established works too, is because there's a set level of expectation. Like with Disney, with all the live action remakes, there's a set level of expectations that fans of a previously established world are going to have. Yeah. They're going to and if you do the exact same, if you do the exact same thing over again, you're going to make enemies. If you make too many changes, you're going to make enemies. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation.
It's definitely tough. How do you, that balancing act? How do you make it fresh but also familiar? Which goes to like all writing.
Yeah, no.
I think, but when you're dealing with something that has a built-in following and has been around for a while or is at least popular, it gets a little tough.
Yeah, and I think in the age, we're living in a revival age where there's a lot of remakes, reboots, things being brought up because they're well-known, well-established, and there's a set number that comes with anything that already exists that it's going to bring in a certain established fan base. And I think that anything new that doesn't have a well-established canon has a trickier time getting its feet. Yeah,
I think for me, as long as if I were to say what do I prefer, I would say the canon, depending on what you're going to change, as long as you don't change too many core elements, which you mentioned, like core stuff, then I'm okay.
Well, it's also, when you and I were talking about this, I don't know, about a week or so ago, the live action redo of Avatar. There's a certain number of changes in that. I don't think that it has killed it.
No, yeah.
But it's definitely different than the animated series. And, they're taking some risks, but so far, I think it has a good chance of itself. You just cut the line, you leave.
I just cut the line and I leave, and I'm like,
nope, I will not stand for this.
This guy's fucking stupid. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I actually haven't finished the series.
I haven't either. So I just threw it out as an example.
There's my unspoken take on it. If that tells you anything, it's just anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew this one was going to be like, I've had the idea to do this one for a while, but I've been dancing around it because I'm like, this is going to be a tough one to talk about.
Well, it's, it's definitely tough. Like, so I'm thinking of I'm just spitting off examples again. So the Final Fantasy series, Final Fantasy 7 in particular, I'm thinking about. The original game is one of my all-time favorites.
I've only read information on Final Fantasy. I've never actually gotten around to playing them.
They're good. They are definitely have their own style of like RPG game.
Yeah.
You can tell it's a Final Fantasy game, the way it's designed and how it works and all that. One of the most beloved ones, I think the whole series is, but I would say one of the more popular ones was Final Fantasy VII. Came out on the PlayStation 1 back in 97 or 98, maybe. And they recently did the reboot of it. And so in 2020, the first version, they decided to turn it into a trilogy, which I guess is technically an homage to the original game, which came on 3 discs at the time because they couldn't fit the whole game on the CDs back when you actually had physical hardware.
Yeah. As we move into a digital download age.
They actually, and for anyone who hasn't played the game, I'm going to get into spoilers here. One of the things that for at least how I took it, maybe I'm wrong, what they did in Remake, the first one that came out in 2020, the newest version, Rebirth, the continuation of it just came out last month, 2 months ago. So that one's brand new. You need a PS5 to play it though, which I don't have. But I think they took an interesting take on canon. I just it sat with me at first. I was like, ooh, I don't like this.
Yeah.
I've kind of toned it down a little bit. So essentially, you could argue it's a multiverse thing too. From what I understand, and I haven't played the newest one, so maybe there's more to be revealed that I don't know of, but I'm just going off of what I played. The original game from PlayStation 1 happened, and this is like an alternate version where, from what I could get, the main bad guy in it is aware of what happened in the original game, and he's essentially trying to avoid that fate again. So the canon, if you will, literally manifests in the new game. The old game, the canon of the old game, literally manifests in the new one in this form of like these spectral ghosts that just randomly attack you or the characters throughout the game, trying to force you to do exactly what the old game was. And the way the first game ends, they kind of set it up to where we're breaking canon, at least, just to, if anything, just to make you doubt what's going to happen in the newest iteration that was just released.
Yeah.
So I do think, having looked at it now and given a little bit more time from it, I'm like, okay, I like that concept. I just wish they would have picked a better way to show it in the game instead of how they literally picked these like just blob ghosts that kind of represent them.
And that's that to me that's very akin to the movie. The
one
Spirits Within.
that yes.
Like that's like the main threat in that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's it's similar. It's kind of similar to that and what the ghosts like look like, sort of. It's almost like they looked like something out of like Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, okay.
Which I know is in a Final Fantasy style, but I think it was the representation they took. It got very, I don't want to say the term meta for me, but that's essentially what it got.
If the shoe fits,
and I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, I'm fine if you want to do that. If you want to literally say, hey, we're gonna change the canon here a bit, totally fine. I feel like there was a better way to do it that wasn't so on the nose and blatant. You could have used the subtext, I think, better. But yeah, that's another example I can think of where they really went head on.
Apply directly to the head.
Canon. Yeah. No, go ahead.
No,
that was it.
You said head on. I said apply directly to the head.
Apply directly. Oh my God, I haven't seen that commercial in ages.
Yeah, it's an absolute classic. To spin us back just a little bit on the subject of Marvel, I always found it interesting, and since you bring up the word meta, I find it interesting how meta Marvel can get on story canon at times, especially in Across the Spider-Verse and the most recent animated Spider-Man.
Yeah,
they did a whole thing about canon events, which I thought I took that as really funny because it was like extremely meta. Like they basically said that traveling through the multiverse and through time, that they couldn't alter certain things about people's storylines because they are quote unquote canon events, things that can't be changed because they drive certain aspects of each character.
Yeah, and that I think is an interesting way. That's similar to what I was just talking about with Final Fantasy. I personally think I like the Spider-Verse way a little bit more, because it was more kind of just, it's there, but they also don't beat you over the head with it too much, I don't think.
Yeah.
A little bit more elegantly done, I guess, if I had to pick apart why I enjoyed that a little bit more.
Yeah, some of the other different alterations between the MCU and like the core comics, I always make the make the hilarious argument for Marvel that like basically anything you want to happen to any of these characters has happened to them at some point in the comics.
Yeah.
Because there is like variations of every character to oblivion.
Well, yeah, and it's like how many times can you tell the same stuff with the same characters? You have to start to make new things up.
And one of the core story threads, and one of the things that a lot of comic book fans harp on, comics versus the movies of the MCU, is that the big change with Captain America is that in the MCU, he's the last introduced member of the Avengers to that like core team in the original Avengers movie in 2012.
Yeah.
In the comic books, he's like the founding member. He starts the whole thing. So it's like a lot of people argue that changes up his character dynamic to a negative degree.
I'm curious how so. You know more about this than I do. What specifically? I am curious now. Like by changing that canon, how does it change him to a negative?
Well, they're saying the argument is that it removes him from like a leadership iconography, like central figure of the Avengers, whereas like he kind of earns that position in the movies. I think there's merit to both takes on it.
Yeah,
I think he's more like a firm leadership role in the comics for sure. Like he definitely holds that position with an iron fist, whereas he's a little bit more of like a humble stumble into the role type in the movies. And I think that there's there's some merit to both of those takes. I think that it changes it up a little bit, offers something a little different. And I think it's interesting how it does play from both of those sides. So for as much as like every Reddit Marvel fan would crucify me for saying that, I think he is as interesting a character in both of those aspects. And I think that goes for a lot of the characters in the MCU that they've made changes to. I think that people would argue every single one of those till blue in the face, and I think I'm not going to get into all that, but I do think it raises some interesting questions just on the nature of story canon, like making changes. I think you have to be smart about what you do to beloved characters, and you have to be very careful and reverent, but not too reverent. I think that it's a bit of a tightrope to walk. You got to be careful for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think about, I'll jump over to DC for a second. Yeah. I think about Batman. A big one you always say is Batman never kills.
Yeah.
And
that's one that's been played with a lot.
I remember when I first heard that in the Christopher Nolan one, Batman Begins, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Because I remember if you go back and watch the Tim Burton ones, especially with Michael Keaton.
He kills a lot of people.
He kills a lot of people in that.
He drops a bomb on a factory.
Yeah, he drops a bomb in a factory. He definitely, I can remember, he like burns a guy alive with the exhaust of the Batmobile. I know he throws. I mean, the Joker dies. I mean, I don't think he necessarily kills him.
He deploys a chain gun from the front of his vehicle and just starts mowing things down. He doesn't save him
either. So the Joker dies. Spoilers. Yeah. In the Tim Burton take. So that was something when I saw that in Batman Begins.
I also love how you say spoilers after you say the spoiler.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
So great.
I mean, good God, it's been out for a while.
It's been out since 1989, if you're not around.
Yeah, but anyway. Yeah, that was one that like took me. I'm like, oh. And now I have the argument. I'm like, well, I don't know what is canon, honestly, for Batman. Is he... I never saw him as someone who would just kill needlessly.
Yeah.
But I never saw him as someone, though, who would not kill if it was gonna... Like... I truly do think that if Batman were real and the Joker were real, the Joker would have been dead after maybe the third time he broke out of prison or something.
I think that's part of the justification for the no-kill rule, though, is because it's like it does make the Joker dynamic a little more interesting if Batman has this moral
it does. It absolutely does. So you can changing that, whichever one is canon. I don't know which one is.
I think it's been back and forth. I think it's kind of been both.
Yeah, but again. But
I think from the other side of that, I think it makes Batman a more interesting character if he would kill somebody given the chance. So, I don't know. Yeah. It's a tough one. Yeah, and I think that's why there's been a wrestle over it, because it's like there's cases for both things. And I think it depends on the story. I think it needs to be right for the story that's being told. Yeah,
what story do you want to tell?
I think that's why DC is set up for a good situation right now, because they're kind of in this isolated universe state, especially with Joaquin Phoenix's and Todd Phillips' Joker. It's like they're telling universe unique stories. So it's like each one is like very in its own isolated world and doesn't really affect too much outside of its own little bubble. And I think that that's a great place to be. Each movie is its own little sandbox. I did have a blurb I wanted to get into just on the subject of social media. And I think this was like, when I think of story canon, this is like the spiciest bit I think that I have on it. And it's, I feel that the rise of...
Throw a little bit of that horseradish on it.
Make a little spice. Just like my mother used to make. Sorry, I'm still on last week's topic.
Is he gonna watch or what?
He's a German Shepherd. It's awkward for him.
Shepherd. I'm an Italian. I can't.
What?
But anyway, yes. But you were talking about social media.
On the subject of social media, as it relates to story canon, I think it has been an interesting rise to watch social media directly impact creators of well-established franchises. And I think that it has been the worst thing for storytelling.
No, I'm honestly right there with you. It's created a
shouting match between creator and consumer.
Yeah. I even think it's created a bad gatekeeping type. There's a term I'm looking for there. Like, definitely a negative impact.
Well, it's made a situation where these big corporations that own these franchises are now forced to bend the knee to what the audience says that they want, which isn't always exactly what they need from stories. And this is a very complicated, very nuanced conversation as far as that's concerned, but I think that it's difficult when a corporation can do no right for these sets of characters. I think it puts them in a tough spot because they literally can't do anything to satisfy an audience that is constantly 24 hours a day picking it apart online.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. There's nothing that they can do right.
And I think too, and it's led to this kind of toxic atmosphere where creators are actively engaging with certain fans who, the worst of the internet coming out, you're going to get terrible. I miss the days where creators were completely tight-lipped about a project. You didn't get any information out of them themselves. Now we have, Twitter, X, what have you.
Yeah,
they're actively
there was
engaging.
That whole viral marketing trend was nothing back in the day. Yeah,
I miss when there was like a brick wall between the audience and who was creating, and you got like a quote from an article every like couple of months, but that's like all you ever really saw of them. Now there's this need to actively engage, and I feel it's only been a negative thing.
Yeah. No, I would too. I think about how, going to a movie now, I'm not as excited as I used to be about the coming attractions. Like that was always, now credit back before the internet was what it is now. That was the only place you could really see the full movie trailer. And I can remember always being there, like being like, oh man, what are we going to see? Oh man, I hope there's a trailer. Maybe they made a movie out of this. Now you just pop open your phone and watch it whenever you want.
Yeah,
I do think a little bit of that magic is gone.
I saw this video that I'd completely forgotten about. It was like this like compiled interview set talking about the 1989 Batman trailer specifically, and how people would buy tickets to movies they didn't even want to see, but they would ask the managers of the theaters if the Batman trailer was showing. They would literally buy a movie ticket just to go see the Batman trailer. And then they'd leave.
I think the last movie I ever did that with was Elf, which I was happy I went to go see that, but I went to go see it so I could see the Lord of the Rings trailer.
Oh yeah. I remember that was a big deal too. That might have been the
last time I did that.
Yeah, because it's a new world now. You have it in your pocket.
You have it in your pocket.
But I feel like the rise of social media has just really been a downfall of it. And to use a cooking metaphor, it's like we have a million people constantly meddling in the preparing of a dish, not letting the cook, take an active role in creating it, and they're just constantly trying to acquiesce people who are going to be like, if you had people in the restaurant coming in and telling you, all of them at once, telling you how to prepare the dish, and they're not letting you time it correctly in the oven. It's constantly being taken in and out to check on it, and then when it ultimately tastes like crap as a result of all that, it's the chef's fault, not theirs.
Someone wants a souffle, the other wants a steak,
and they're all just like messing up the process. And then when it's ultimately inevitably a failure, it's not their fault for completely picking it apart. It's the chef's fault. And I think that
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day because we bring up the cooking metaphor a lot, and I'm like, it's exactly what it is. It's like if you had a restaurant and everybody just came in and just started picking apart your whole process.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you wouldn't. I mean, I guess maybe in certain restaurants, I don't know. But you wouldn't be allowed, I'm assuming, in the kitchen to be like, nope, you got to do it this way or that way.
And it's like we're letting everybody in the world in the kitchen.
Yeah. And again, this it's almost like, and this is social media, there are some times where you don't have to have an opinion about something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. You can just be indifferent to it, or you can understand, like, yeah, my opinion doesn't really matter in this instance.
Well, that's
it's okay.
A lot with our show, too. Like, I tend to take the stance that if I'm not enthused or if I'm even angered by something, I just don't talk about it. I walk away. Like, I just don't let it, I don't give it my credence. And I only, like, I want to talk about things I'm excited about, and and like fill my life with excitement. I don't want to, I don't want to give anything any more credence that tears me down, you know? That's at least one man's take.
Yeah, no, I just think, like you said, with social media, it, you know, when it comes to, they're changing the canon of something, everyone is emboldened to want to give their take. And I think we have to sometimes remember, we don't always have to give our take, and sometimes their take, it doesn't really, it's just not a conversation for you that you have to have with everybody at the moment.
It's okay to let things fail.
Yeah, or just let things go, or, you know, like, I'm trying to think of like I am not a expert in brain surgery, obviously. So I wouldn't be giving my take to a brain surgeon, because I'm like, one, that's a waste of my time and energy, and two, my take is going to be total bullshit.
Yeah.
So there's just no point. That's a bad example, but hopefully you catch the drift of what I'm trying to say.
No, absolutely. It's like, you know, you wouldn't step into a kitchen and just give your advice.
But basically, I'm saying that my opinion doesn't always hold. I mean, it is an opinion, but it doesn't always have any sway to it. It kind of depends on the subject. I would like to think, you know, if we're talking something about like storytelling or fantasy particularly, all right, like you said, that's something that excites me. I've dabbled in it enough that I feel like, okay, my opinion holds a little bit, or my advice or my take on something holds a little bit more weight in that arena. But when you get into something else, like astrophysics, yeah, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut because I have no clue what the I'm talking about. And that's okay. I don't have to.
At least, like, to get into a public debate, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I speculate about a lot of things that, you know, go well beyond my realm of expertise, because I constantly want to know more, but I don't go around telling people I know more than them about it. You know? That's just from a place of constantly wanting to learn more about everything.
Yeah. Like, I couldn't argue with a astrophysicist over, well, you're doing that wrong or something, or why'd you change this principle around? Like, you don't, like, it's just that, like, I feel like it almost, like, just, it brings out this urge to have to say something, and you don't always have to, and your opinion isn't always valid or worthy of being said, depending on the subject, as terrible as that might sound.
Yeah. Part of why I brought up Marvel too was because it's interesting to have watched the movie rights change hands at times as they have, from Fantastic Four going through Fox and changing hands a number of times over the years, eventually land back at Disney with Marvel Studios. Then you also have the extremely interesting circumstance of Spider-Man, where it's kind of the last holdout, I guess, in terms of movie rights, currently sitting at Sony, where they have a partnership deal with Marvel Studios, and it's now they're kind of shaking hands, even though Sony still owns the character.
Yeah.
And so you have all these different entities doing their best to kind of control the story of what is and isn't canon within the Marvel universe, the Marvel comic universe, and the Marvel cinematic universe. There's a lot going on, a lot of turning wheels. But as a result, you know, you have all these different Spider-Man takes. You have what is it now, 3-4 different takes of Fantastic Four, including the original,
something along those lines. Yeah,
what was it, the 90s take that like barely ever saw the light of day? So there's a lot of different interpretations, a lot of different variations of these characters over the years. And Incredible Hulk, look at that. Look at how that's evolved over the years. There was the original Ang Lee movie, which then is the only MCU movie to be a technical sequel of a pre-existing movie, is Incredible Hulk. The Ed Norton movie is actually a sequel to the Ang Lee movie. but is also
Wait, it isn't? It is a sequel to the Ang Lee?
Yeah, so it actually like continues the story of the Ang Lee Hulk movie, while
the one with
Eric Bana.
With Eric Bana in it?
So
that is a sequel?
It was intended to be like kind of like a loose sequel to the Ang Lee Hulk movie.
Okay. I never knew that. I always thought it was like, oh, we want to do the MCU now, but that Hulk doesn't fit with our canon.
So they kind of like had a cake.
So we got to reboot it real quick.
Yeah, it was kind of like a soft reboot where they like continue the story but recast the actors. But it was like they were still kind of taking off of that ending point while kind of tweaking the conditions of what actually... It was very odd, like how they handled that. But yeah, I always took it as that was like why that one's kind of an anomaly, is like it's a direct sequel. It is the only MCU movie that's a direct sequel.
Huh.
So it was interesting, an interesting move by Disney. As soon as they got their hands on Star Wars, what's known as the Star Wars Expanded Universe is all the books and comic books and like video game storylines. Basically, anything that wasn't in a Star Wars movie is considered under the Star Wars Expanded Universe.
Yeah,
or like even the Star Wars Clone Wars is not part of the, like they're part of the movies. So like any like official Lucasfilm material was pure canon, but then there was the Expanded Universe, which is basically any Star Wars novel, book, storyline of any kind, anything, and that's known as the Expanded Universe. So the first move that Disney made when they got it was to completely decanonize the entire Expanded Universe, which there is a case for this, in that the Expanded Universe has a lot of contradictions in it. There's like the Marvel comics, there's like 15 renditions of each storyline for each character because it was allowed to go untethered for like 30 years with no cross checks or anything. And that's partly what made it so great, was all these authors and stuff could just go ham with whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's what made it so great. But now once you put it under a single cohesive label, you have to start like making definitive lines for what happened to these characters. And that ruffled some feathers.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because you're now putting firm lines on what fans had grown up with for 30 years.
Well, no, I think too, and when you, just the canonization, in the Roman Catholic Church, that's when someone is officially admitted into sainthood.
Yeah.
Usually after they're long dead. But I think that's kind of what is so tough and it's hard, and why people can have such a visceral reaction sometimes if canon gets changed, because you're essentially decanonizing or taking away something that in their eyes was almost sacrosanct. That sainthood, if you will, of what they've followed and enjoyed for years. It's tough. It's definitely tough to try to do, but again, how do you make something fresh but still familiar without,
and in some cases make it
breaking
cohesive,
the foundation?
Because if you're trying to tell it definitively, you gotta make it definitive for audiences that are coming in fresh. But at the same time, you gotta walk that tightrope balance, because you're dealing with something that people have known for a long time. It's tricky.
Yeah, tricky is
to say the least.
Is the least. Yeah.
And there's also, by the similar token, Star Trek has done a bit of a revamp over recent years, especially with the introduction of the Picard series. A lot of people have been like cherry picking things that are very contradictory to the Next Generation series.
Yep.
With all the reboots and redos and refranchising of all these big known storylines, it's tricky, because you even have one small oversight to the pre-existing storytelling, you are going to get nitpicked into oblivion on the internet. So
yeah. Well, I think it begs the question too, living in this age of reboots, redos, remakes, rebirths, where, and I know there's still original content being made every day.
I would even say more so than ever, because there's the digital age that we're living in, and people have more access, and I really do feel like there's more content coming out.
Yeah, I think it's
overwhelming how much stuff is coming out.
Yeah, I think it's just the sense that it seems to not, and again, I live under a rock, so I don't know. It doesn't seem to always be the focus of the conversation, because there's tons of new things always being made, and yet it sometimes feels like, even though you have literally the world in the palm of your hand in your phone, it seems like it's a little bit more difficult to find the things you want, because there's tons of stuff just clouding it.
Yeah, and as far as like new content being made, it's like you can't keep up with it all anymore because there is just such a high volume.
Yeah, there is so much.
And honestly, a lot of the time with independent film, there's such a hard time to even get something made that it isn't even really marketed.
Mm-hmm.
So they rely on festivals and word of mouth to get things around, and that doesn't always get things as far as it should. And things that can spend a multi-million-dollar budget in marketing equated equally to its production budget, everybody is gonna know about that, not the small independent.
Yeah. And I think too, like with Canon, you have how many times you have to go back and tell me how many times I've said that word in this episode. keep like a counter.
I can actually. I can tell you once it's there.
You can. Don't do that. With what is accepted as genuine to the story, I think I'll go back to another video game. Although I think now there isn't. What am I saying? There is an official timeline. I was going to say for the longest time, the Zelda games.
Oh my gosh.
There was no official timeline.
How have we not talked about Zelda yet in this?
Yeah,
this episode?
But I mean, we will. But that's just one that finally clicked in my head. I'm like, yeah, there was one where for the longest time, I didn't know this is what's considered the core story and elements.
Part of what I love about Zelda is it completely reinvents the canon in every single installment.
Yeah, that's what I always took it as. I always took it as before the official timeline was that it's like it's mythology. It's kind of the same characters, but each time the shtick of it, if you will, is someone else's. This is a different version, a new telling of it as the story is passed on generation to generation.
It's kind of like we were going back to our time travel episode. It's kind of going through that erased timeline hypothesis.
Yeah,
it's like every single iteration. It's like every time Link wakes up, he's waking up into a completely revamped version of Hyrule, and it's like how Majora's Mask and Ocarina are tied together. It's like it's not even every game; it's every iteration. So like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are kind of one iteration. It's interesting because you get little pockets of growth, but then it resets itself. Yeah. Zelda's a very unique storyline.
Absolutely.
In so many ways, it literally built into itself, restructuring its own canon, which is kind of genius. Why did I not think of that in my notes? I'm going to be kicking myself over that one for a while.
Did you this up? I'm sorry, I'm swearing.
On a weekly basis, I this up.
But yes, story canon it's an interesting thing. It's definitely a gangly monster, I guess.
That's appropriate
to put it in. Like it's just it's tough to wrap your head around, and if what is, what isn't, does it matter? Does it matter? Does it not matter?
The bigger a franchise gets, the harder it is to wrap your head around the canon, and it's almost like a bubble burst effect that like once it reaches a critical mass, it's like it just gets to be too much to invest in.
Yeah.
So it's tricky. It's like obviously these corporations want the biggest possible franchise imaginable, but at what point is it too big? Sometimes simpler is better.
Yeah, less is more.
Less can be more.
I work with a lot less every day, and look at how I turned out.
And look at how well I'm doing.
Look at me.
One day, lad, all this can be yours. What the curtains?
No, don't look at me. I'm hideous.
You've accumulated an entire lifetime of smoking in 72 hours.
No, I didn't. I don't like the ghosts in Final Fantasy VII. I just don't like them. Like, I get I get what they represent. I get if that's what you want to do with it, but I'll just say, I think you could have done it better. I think there could have been a way to be more player interactive or keep it more subtextual, or just, it doesn't have to be right in your face. Or hell, just change the design if you have to keep them. Like, the designs looked like previs almost. Like, you know what I mean?
We wake up Tuesday morning and it's just the headline: Matt Hahn canceled for Final Fantasy.
Matt Hahn canceled for Final Fantasy VII. I still love the game. It's still an amazing game.
I just hate the storytelling.
I just hate everything else.
I love it.
No,
I just hate everything about it.
No. I just like I said, it's like if you have to give me one thing, and I'm just like, just change the goddamn design of those ghosts. Make them look something different. I don't know.
I'll tell you what though, I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
Well, are you not? Well, you should be. You should be.
You will be. I just pictured like that scene, like in Empire. I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
You will be.
You will be.
I think it's just called Reddit.
Oh, that's whatever.
No, it's just
You know what time it is right now.
Reddit is just
bringing the jokes.